It's working on.
And to be clear, Vivian, I think that it is possible to have like a prejudice against somebody based on an ethnicity or nationality. Like Chinese people, I'm sure, deal with this a lot. Right? They see a Chinese person, they assume that they eat dogs, because a certain part of the country has this festival like once a year or whatever, right? So yeah, I think you can definitely have those prejudices, and that can be a really negative thing. But I don't know if I put on the same level as like racism.
I think it functions pretty much identically in many situations. I think the racism against, what you would call, I don't know, prejudice against the nationality of Chinese people, functions pretty much exactly the same as racism. Really, I don't think there's any fucking difference, and I would say it's the same for like I said earlier, Polish people over here, or Muslims in general, right? I would say these things, there really isn't much air between them, and I think it's only a semantic debate as to whether you want to call it racism or not. Plenty of people do call it racism, and I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. I have an issue with let's say we're talking about Muslims or Christians or Buddhists or whatever. Right? I think it's fine to mock somebody for religious belief, because this is something that they're like positively doing, right? They're making a decision to
wait. Now the discrimination against Muslims isn't based purely on religious belief, right? It's them being seen as a group of people who are different because of their culture, because of a whole bunch of different things, right? Stoked by obviously 9/11 and a whole bunch of other shit, right? Like the war on terror and so on.
Sure, I mean, but you could say,
how could we forget when you celebrate it every year, you fucking weirdos?
You can say something similar about Christians. Like there are some Christians who don't buy into or like perpetuate like the homophobia or the transphobia or this anti-abortion stuff, but they still identify as Christians. But they're going to get a lot of the same shit, right, for being Christian that any of those other people.
I think attacking somebody for their moral beliefs or attacking them for certain beliefs that are, unsupportable and ridiculous. Like this is very different from attacking them as a group of people and saying that, making disparaging comments about them that kind of aren't true. I mean, kind of the heart of racism in general is that it's either making a moral judgment on a cultural thing that you really don't have any kind of like moral standing on, right? So I don't know. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I'm sure you could. And I lost my fucking thread there. I'm sorry. What was the last thing you said?
Well, I guess just to so I think I understand where you're going with this. So do you think that like, so if I haven't grown up in a culture, right, with their perspective and experiences, and they're doing a thing that I find distasteful, whether it's eating dogs or dressing a certain way or whatever, right? Do you think that it'd be wrong for me to make some kind of moral judgment against them? Or not even a moral judgment.
I mean, I think the eating dogs thing is one of the stupidest fucking things there is, right?
Yeah, I agree.
We all fucking eat meat. And like, even if another country did eat dogs on the level that you would need to be fucking concerned about, right? Who gives a shit? If they're factory farming dogs and we're factory farming cows, who really cares? Right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But if I were someone who found that distasteful, right? If I wanted to make a judgment, but whether it's that or again, certain like what's the thing? Even like Sweet 16 parties. If I thought that was like a sexist, patriarchal thing, right? And I wanted to cast some kind of judgment about that, right? Would it be wrong for me to do that?
No, of course not. I guess the point was like there are some things that you have no moral standing to like make a judgment on, like other countries eating dogs and us eating cows. Like, who gives the right? Like that you don't have a leg to fucking stand on with that. As opposed to like saying, I don't know, Saudi Arabia treats women like shit, right? This isn't a racist statement. This is just a statement of fucking fact.
Right. Okay. I understand.
Okay. So, are we talking about whether being racist is cool or not? What's the context here?
Yeah. Talking about Anglophobia, because Pyro won't stop being Anglophobic to me.
She's British, 1776.
Like that's literally the extent World War I and II. They needed our help.
Just
I
mock them
think-
for having a queen. Like why would you go to?
I mean,
something
like
so-
that too. Like they're still a monarchy. Like
I don't want a queen. Fuck the queen.
Yeah, it's based. Okay.
What if we reduce it to
So did we
just?
argue that it's okay or not okay to make jokes about white people? What was the verdict on that?
once it got really serious, like even like now, like it's still bad that I do it. Like if Vivian comes to me and is like, "Yo, I find offense to this. Please stop." I will stop doing it. Like right now, she's told me she finds it boring, which not inherently offensive, but like I'll tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, I think
Just
where
come
the-
up
where
with
the
different
conversation-
jokes, dude. Just come up
I think where
with
the
different jokes.
I think where the conversation now is it okay to make a joke about somebody's like nationality, and because it might function in a very similar way to a joke about someone's race.
So
I
I think on a fundamental level, it's really difficult to avoid doing this, making fun of people's race, ethnicity, or nationality, because they're always going to be tied to characteristics that aren't intrinsic, but are sort of like extrinsically associated. So we see this all the time with dog whistling racism against black people here in the States, right? Like people who wear their pants down around their ankles or whatever, like that's a big like talking point, you know? Now, obviously there's no gene for that, but we know when people talk about those types, they're usually signaling at black people. So does that mean you can't make fun of people who wear their pants down really low? Because I personally think it's kind of a dumb fashion thing. I mean, racialized or not. But if I were to like go around saying, yeah, this is dumb, wearing your pants down around your ankles, even though I think that fundamentally I have a right to do that, there's nothing like inherently wrong with it. It's kind of tied to a lot of really weird cultural stigma at the moment. So I think you just have to reflect on what the discourse is at the time and use that to inform what acceptable types of commentary or jokes are. And that's always going to change with time, right? Like you were just talking about the like blank culture eats dogs thing. I think the reason why that's considered offensive is because it plays heavily into the idea that I think it's like Southeast Asian people being amoral, like robotic monsters
It's
types.
like a hive bug people or something.
Yeah. Like in the 19th century, it was like, well, the fearsome Orient, full of intelligent but utterly amoral people, or some shit like that. So we like, we really played up like they eat dogs. They don't even care for man's best friend. But if we lived in a world without that context, maybe it would be like totally innocuous, Like with regards to the Brit thing. I mean, I don't care about like the making Brit jokes, I guess, apart from the fact that I do agree some people are deeply unfunny about it, myself included. With like the white stuff, I make jokes about white people, but like, man, sometimes when people make jokes about white people, I don't think they're jokes. I just think they're getting away with the fact that people assume they're jokes, like there are people who, because like the white genocide memes can be funny because it's not happening, so you can make fun of it and sort of feign seriousness, but there are people who will make jokes about that, and the punchline to those jokes is that they hate white people, and that's always kind of weird. So I think we just have to be introspective about why we're saying what we're saying and how does it contribute to the discourse at the time.
So
That's
I have
my
a
opening.
If you make enough of these jokes, right? You've got to recognize that if you create a culture where these jokes are like implying that people of X nationality are bad simply because they are of X nationality, right? You have new people coming into that environment, into that community all the time, right? And not all of them are gonna like be joking to the same fucking degree. You see this happen
about the Brits,
like,
are we?
all the time. Yeah, I'm talking about the Brits right now. Okay, so like.
I can't really get behind it. Look, if it makes you feel any better, I'm trying to incorporate more casual anti-Slavic racism into my language
That's
to diversify a little
fucking
bit.
dreadful. I mean, so again, like
you met a Slav?
culturally, yeah. But so like, culturally, these jokes can be like harmful in different ways as well. We also have to recognize that we live in a very connected global community, and so making jokes about Slavic people in the United States might not seem like that much of a problem because there isn't like a lot of overt racism against Slavic people. I don't know if there is in the United States or not, but I'm just assuming.
You can
Whereas
make,
like
anti-racist jokes there, right? I mean, with any group, like the anti-Brit stuff isn't like racist against Anglo people. It's not usually about inherent genetic inferiority. If anything, I think it's a bit of a pushback on the fact that for decades, people with British accents have been considered like super attractive here in the States.
We are. What?
Here in the States, like for the longest time, like British accents have been considered like super suave and attractive, you know?
Yeah,
So
I know.
think right, so
because
there's
that's because we are. Yeah.
Right.
Like, that's just a statement of fact. Like,
A well-deserved blowback that. I mean, like, people make fun of Americans all around the world, right? We kind of deserve it. You guys kind of deserve it. You've had a few Joker moments yourself. But I don't think it, like, reinforces any stigma against inherent characteristics to make, like, oh, yeah, Britball guy, yeah. Love me chips, love me queen, simple as. Like, I don't know if it really goes beyond the sort of playful banter nationalism that's, if anything, at least on a lot of lefty communities online, I feel like kind of like a playful facsimile of actual nationalism in a way that's meant to satirize the whole thing, really.
So I have a question. So we've been talking so far about like potentially like harmful jokes about people's nationality and whatnot. Like, can anyone think of like an example? Maybe there might be like a stand-up comedian you might be familiar with, and so on. Like what jokes about like what would you consider like a joke about someone's nationality that you would consider to be like okay? Like what would one that you wouldn't consider to be offensive? I'm
Like
sure that we
making
can
fun
think
of French people for running away and laughing like frogs. Seems
I don't know. Again, that stuff just seems really cringe to me. Like,
yeah, it's a bad joke. Like I wouldn't say it's funny, but I don't think it's.
I mean,
like,
it's super
harmful.
shit given what the French actually went through in the Second World War. But like, it's also just that I think if you spend enough time in fucking online spaces, as the terminally online people in this fucking Discord channel do, it does tend to permeate the air. I don't think I've ever been in a panel with oh fuck, what's his name? Why can't I remember it now? French dude who does all the editing for like Dylan Burns and stuff. It's really annoying.
Mr. Geek?
Mr. Geek. Yeah. Sorry. I love Mr. Geek. I just haven't spoken to him for a while and my brain is made of cottage cheese apparently. But I don't think I've ever been on a panel or even in a chat with him, like with a decent amount of people in it, where there hasn't been some like French jokes. It must get really fucking tiring and just feel kind of obnoxious.
Wasn't that just an unfunny thing mostly? I mean, that's my problem with misogynistic jokes half the time. You know, sometimes it can be funny, but a problem is like a lot of fucking pasty white boys online are so eager to dump their entire brain archive of get back to the kitchen jokes that it becomes overused and every woman online is constantly like bombarded every day with that shit. But I think like pointed funny bits of, you know, like anti-French humor or whatever, I mean, that can be good.
So, you saying it about misogynistic jokes there just kind of like triggered a thought for me. I've been super frustrated over the last couple of years at the lack of attention paid to the situation in the UK as regards to trans people, right? I think if you make all these misogynistic jokes all the time, right, it can like force women out of spaces, force women out of conversations, and so on. Even if it's just that they're painfully unfunny and not particularly like harmful or whatever. And I think that there's a possibility that the attitude towards like British people in general in leftist spaces could contribute somewhat to a certain degree of apathy towards the struggles that we're facing over here at the moment as well.
British trans people. I don't think I've ever seen British trans people struggle being devalued because of the whole. I mean, the whole TERF Island.
I'm not saying it's direct, and the TERF Island meme actually fucking pisses me off sometimes because it's almost a thought-terminating cliche at this point, where people are like, "Lol, lol, fucking TERF Island," and the conversation doesn't go much further. It's only in very, very recent times that people have actually started talking about it in any kind of serious way, and it's been a significant problem for the last 5 years really since the GRA consultation. So
do you think people would have paid more attention to the issues if it weren't for the TERF Island meme? If anything, I feel like the joke is kind of like getting your foot in the door. Even if a lot of people don't go beyond that, the fact that TERF Island is a near ubiquitous term for the UK is kind of a, or England at least, is kind of a, I don't know, culturally normalizing. It means that like people know that at least.
Well, to a certain degree, yeah. But also, there's, I think it depends on my mood on that day and just how bad shit's been in the UK, right? Because we have some weeks where it's literally like every single fucking newspaper will release a negative article about trans people, and the government will endorse some new fucking hate group and try and put out some legislation to fuck us over, and those weeks are so fucking depressing. I think sometimes it can really feel like what you're laughing at with the lol TERF Island thing. Like, there's nothing funny about it. I would genuinely use the term genocidal for like the attitude of some people here in the UK towards trans people. I think we're bordering on. I think it's probably appropriate to say that like there is a genocidal culture towards trans people here in the United Kingdom at this point in time, and I think that making those, would you go? I hate to do the fucking whole Godwin's law shit, but like, would you, if you were in a chat with like a Jewish dude in Germany, right? If they had Discord at the time under the Nazi regime, and be like, lol lol lol, Nazi island or Nazi country or whatever, right? Like, would you that would be incredibly offensive. And I'm not saying they're exactly the same thing. Obviously they're not. But like, it does seem kind of callous almost. Do you know what I mean?
The only message implicit in TERF Island is that it's a country that's very transphobic. I mean, like, if it was like 1932 and Germany just announced like its next new bullshit law for Jewish people or whatever, and people were like, "What? Fucking anti-Semitic Germany," or some shit like that, or anti-Semitic mostly landlocked country, or something like that. I don't know if that would necessarily be offensive. You had to add the lol there, right? Which kind of implies callous disregard.
Which is the attitude a lot of the time. Like,
well, we say TERF Island because England engages in that shit so often. But I mean, what's
America engages in that shit so often as well. We don't hear the same thing, and half our problems are because of shit that's happened in America. Heritage Foundation funded us. The fucking.
Hold on, that's a non sequitur. When people talk about like TERF Island, we're mostly talking about like the proportional amount of cultural space dedicated towards the advocacy for transphobic positions. And with England, like especially with J.K. Rowling being your stock, like we would have to work very hard to outdo that.
Would you?
At least proportional to the size of our countries. It's not. I mean, it sounds to me like you're just. I can't tell. Do you feel like it's just blasé to say TERF Island, even though the only message there is that the transphobia is there? Or do you think that America should be called TERF Nation? Like, do you want the title shared? I guess I just don't know where the harm is.
Like I said, I think when that's as far as the conversation goes, it feels kind of dismissive almost. It's sort of we expect that kind of shit from TERF Island, right?
I think I know what you're saying. So you're saying that it makes it a bygone conclusion. It's inevitable that the UK is going to be this way.
I mean,
because it's just like that's where the TERFs are.
I mean, sure, to a certain degree. But I mean, I've even had people like say shit like nobody cares what somebody from TERF Island thinks and stuff like that, right? Like, those are the ones that really kind of like they do actually set my teeth on edge a little bit, because I'm just like that. It just feels incredibly dismissive. Yeah.
Imagine being American.
I can kind of understand where you're coming from with that, because it dismisses the people that don't necessarily feel the same way as maybe a lot of people do there, and that hurts the conversation. You know, it's almost limiting in terms of people that are trying to activate to get something done there. You know, when it's just chalked up to, oh well, it's TERF Island. You know, yeah, nothing's going to change there. You know, that sucks. I think that's a horrible way.
That is genuinely how it feels, and I don't know. I have been very frustrated over the last 2 years at like the complete lack of fucking support and solidarity from like Americans on the issue.
Well, telling people they can't say TERF Island isn't going to get more solidarity, right? I mean,
I'm not telling them they can't say TERF Island. I'm saying if they're gonna say TERF Island, they should probably there should probably be a little bit more to it than just like lol well TERF Island.
It kind of feels like
every time I've seen people say TERF Island, it's usually in the context of, you know, degrading England or whatever for their transphobia. I mean, like, whenever I see it used, it's like in a tweet thread of describing how this new thing that's happening is really bad for trans people. I guess it's. I mean, I can understand how its use flippantly could be sort of a thought-terminating cliche, but I think this might be a correlation causation thing, right? I don't know if it's the term that's an issue. It's just some people are going to not care, and TERF Island is an easy thing to say.
I think there's kind of like, I don't know. I think, for a lack of a better term, I don't want to say middle ground, but I can't think of another explanation. Because, like, I see what Viv is getting at, like, what's already been said before, right? Like, it becomes a thought-terminating cliche, and it becomes a way of almost kind of dismissing some of the real problems that happens by leading into, I guess, for kind of the absurdist humor of, like, oh, TERF Island, and so on and so forth. But Vaush is also, on the other hand, with Vaush, saying, like, it's, making fun of the transphobia that seems to be pretty prevalent in England. And I think, like, part of why, like, the TERF Island thing can be so jarring for some is, I think, like, kind of like a mirror, kind of parallel version of what Vaush has said about how, like, it can be unfunny. Like, when it gets repeated over and over and over again, it seems to be like the same joke. And it's like, okay, like cool, like, we're glad that you're calling out the bullshit transphobia. That's great, but can you come up with a better joke? Like, we've been saying this joke,
that's
2 years?
Well, it's not
It's
even
just saying
that.
that some comedy is bad. Like, that's not.
But it's not even that. Like, if we take a look at, like, so the trans charity streams that we've had on the platform over the last few years, right? And they've all been great. They've all been wonderful. But pretty much since the Donkey Kong 64 stream that H Bomber guy did, they've almost all been American focused, right? Trans Lifeline, Trevor Project, whatever. And those people obviously, like, those organizations do great work and they deserve help and charity and so on. But, like, I mean, I don't know. There's just so much to it. I genuinely feel like there just wasn't enough focus on that stuff in the UK, and now it's starting to happen more in the US. TERFism getting that kind of American flavor, right? And I don't know. Like, the whole situation is quite disquieting to me. Sorry.
Or America. Eventually, everything's going to end up being about us, right? We dominate all online discourse.
Well, I think what happened was very, very similar to, like, what happened with like the homophobia shit in Uganda and Zimbabwe and shit, right? Is that Americans found that they couldn't do what they wanted to do in the United States, so they used their organizations and some evangelicals and stuff to, like, go over to these African nations and try and implement those policies that they wanted to see in the United States in places like Africa. And we had a very similar thing with, like, the Heritage Foundation, like, fucking with our politics, right? And American evangelicals, and you've got people like Posey Parker, Lily Cade, who wrote that fucking manifesto. She's a Yankoid. Like, the connections are there. It's just that they weren't able to enact stuff to the same degree.
I just don't know what this has to do
until
with,
more
like,
recently.
The comments we make online. Like, yeah, we're America. We do everything. We are everything. But, like, I don't know. We can say America's transphobic more, I guess. I don't know how this pulls back to, like, I don't even think the TERF Island stuff is really an example of, like, mocking a person's nationality. If anything, it's just sort of a wry commentary on the state of politics in one country.
No, sure. I think we moved slightly on from that conversation. Maybe that was my fault. I think I ended up drawing a parallel somewhere, but I can't remember why we brought up TERF Island in the first place.
So, no, yeah, that was you. Hitting that, I don't know why. But so I think it's an important conversation, nonetheless, on that TERF Island thing.
I'm just saying, pay attention to what happens in other fucking countries, America, because it's going to start happening over there, you know? And solidarity should be universal, not just within the United States.
Yeah, so you said previously that about the joke that Parallel Terrence said previously, that you wouldn't put that on the level as like a joke against a minority, but like,
yeah,
why?
sure. Well, because I don't think British people are like in any danger immediately of being, like, heavily oppressed for their nationality. Maybe in some place in the world, but I can't think of one off the top of my head, right? So, I just don't think it happens. I think the only thing that I said was like these things do take a while to build, and I think you could potentially end up like creating genuine bigotry out of jokes.
What
right?
does that make? What difference does that make to the individual who's experiencing this? Right? Like, sure, the wider culture British people aren't being oppressed for these things, or just use whatever, European nation.
Well, it depends on the nature of the joke and the attitude with which it's said. If people are genuinely discriminating against you because you're British, rather than just like joking around and whatever, then I'd say we'd already kind of crossed the Rubicon from just a joke into actual fucking discrimination, right? And then it does kind of become a little bit of a problem.
So
I think it's funny when we make fun of countries like Italy, for example. That's a good one.
Yeah,
also, like
Italian to like
third generation Italian immigrant.
Italy's a good
you've
one.
You've probably got spaghetti sauce for blood. Like,
Greece is a good one. The entire Balkan region is great. One thing that I find really funny about them is they have a whole different kind of racism. All the Balkan countries, they're all like racist, but against each other and in wacky ways that Americans don't understand. It's always really funny.
Them and against Roma people and against like anyone with like brown skin. Like,
yeah, it's just like imagine being in like Turkey, or like Serbia or something, and being an ethno-nationalist. And there are a lot of them there. Like, who are you
Turkey,
fooling?
big time.
You're all in the Slavic regions. What are you doing? It's like being in a trash heap and declaring like a feudal blood sports like land grab fest with you and all your neighbors, and you're right next to a technologically advanced supernation. Like, what are you?
I think what's
why are you
really
declaring racism off?
I think what's really fucking strange is that like in Russia there is an incredibly like high level of like Islamophobia and racism against people with like darker skin, right? But Russia and Turkey on the world stage, they will team up to commit war crimes in fucking Karabakh, right?
Also, Russia sucks. It's like a shit country. It was looted by oligarchs in the 90s and has been left to rot. Everything there is shit. I've had friends in Russia. It's shit. It's objectively worse than European countries in almost every imaginable cultural, social, and civic, economic, like by every metric you can think of. They just let you say more slurs at gay people, like, and you can beat your wife there, I guess. That's like
I wouldn't want to live there. That's for sure.
As like, imagine being there and being proud. God damn, at least Americans have our military budget. If that's something you really give a shit about, you can take that one all the way to the park. But fucking Russia, this is one of the reasons why I like making fun of countries a little bit. There's so much funny, real nationalism out there that you can satirize, by poking fun at the whole system by which people feign superiority.
But that's what I was saying about like cultural context earlier, right? Like, is that in the United States, it might not be such a problem, but in the United Kingdom, making fun of people for being Slavic, like, that would be a significant problem because we do have a significant history of discriminating against people for being from Poland or from
make fun of Slavic
anywhere in
nationalists,
Eastern Europe.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the big joke. It's like all the Slavic nations want to fight each other or whatever. I think you can do that without being problematic. If the message of the joke is your silly regional infighting is petty and futile, I don't feel like that's necessarily an issue.
Yeah, that shit's fine. But like usually these jokes about people's nationality are like leveled at people on a personal level, right? Like just making general jokes about like how racist Russia is. That's not as bad as like making a joke about somebody who's like right in front of you for being Russian.
Oh, sure, but like if they were like proud of being Russian, if they were like the number one, just imagine that was a Russian accent. Okay, I'm not doing the work today. I think you'd make fun of them for that. Or like that petty bent, like infighting or whatever, Like, I feel like people are naturally kind of tribalistic, and there are good and bad ways to let it out, and like fake nationalism's an okay way. Like with the Italy shit, or like America. Everyone shit talks America, right? You've shit talked America. I've shit talked America. And it's fun, even if you're not bigoted against Americans necessarily, you can have a stereotype of like a power scooter riding, American flag wearing, AR-15 carrying
on a power scooter.
Walmart. Yeah, like that's like
How
the
many of those do you
Walmart
see?
American, right?
On a power scooter. Every
So
time
can I
you
ask
go
you
to
guys
Walmart.
Off-road golf cart.
DB?
so can I ask you guys
Yeah.
a question?
I mean, that
So-
might be in California, but that's not in America.
DB?
And
Sorry.
Oh, shut up, Turk. Okay. So speaking of AR-15s, right? That's in jokes, right? So a lot of people have been making fun of. I've been making fun of Kyle Rittenhouse, and his like crying on the stand during the trial. Like I think that's currently the banner on the politics server, unless they've changed it. And lots of people on Twitter were making fun of this kid for crying the way he did on the stand, right? There's tons of fucking memes about it. Do you think that like that's an issue in terms of like, you know, this is someone who probably has like a lot of like emotional and mental distress over
He murdered 3
shooting some
people. Of course, he's going to be distressed about it.
Wait, I don't know if it's fair to say he murdered them.
Yeah, it's totally fair to
definitely
say he
killed
murdered them.
3 people.
Roblox 3 people. Let's be respectful of the TOS.
He
Roblox
he murdered 3
people.
people.
I calling it murder is a massive stretch. But
Alright,
do you guys
well,
think it's
we'll
okay
call
to,
this
to make fun of
much.
him?
No, you're terrible people for doing it.
Why are we terrible people for making fun of him crying on the stand?
Okay, so I guess I should focus down on that more. Anybody who is making fun of him for his reaction on the stand, who previously or who might possibly in the future talk about like their own issues with mental illness or something very traumatic that they've gone through in their life.
This ain't mental illness. You fucking
Anybody who
murdered
spent
3
5
people.
minutes working in law knows that
didn't
that's a
murder
legal
3 people.
strategy. That's bullshit. He wasn't
I wanna
crying
hear the
for
rest.
real.
I want to hear the rest.
It looked
of this.
fake.
Well, I
Yeah,
want to
no,
hear
no,
this.
you can say that it looks fake all you want, but
It's a
like,
legal
you're not going
strategy. They
through it.
teach
That
people
doesn't
to do
matter.
this
That-
shit on the stand.
See,
I
that
think it's-
doesn't
I
matter.
think
Like,
it's
the fact that
quite-
you're just automatically saying that, like, oh, it's a legal strategy. He's
It is
only
because I've
doing
done
it
that.
for,
I've
like,
helped
No,
people
Jason,
learn to cry on the stand.
Jason,
That's
you're
fucking
doing the
happens.
Travis Scott thing right now. Hey, he's crying. Is he crying the right way? Is it real crying?
Yeah, like
you're doing exactly the same shit you're doing out on the
I
panel.
think the tears are quite probably genuine, but I still don't fucking care. Like, the idea that, like, you know, this could somehow contribute to him getting away with this murder is just the old white woman tears
Self-defense,
thing,
not murder.
right? It's like we see a white woman crying, then whoever's near her must be the one at fault, right?
what's your
I don't know if
definition
you
of
guys,
murder?
Gender?
Sorry.
If you guys actually sometimes see videos of like where a murder will happen and the husband will be asked about the wife, and the sheriff or the police officer will commonly note the reaction of the person after the event, and they will bring it into court and testimony when
That's a good point, actually.
when that person acted like, you know, they were giggling or they were acting normal about it. So I think there is space for that, either faking it or not faking it, and your emotional reaction.
But that's different than just straight
You just have
making
no
fun
idea.
of him for his reaction. If you want to like break down his reaction and say like, oh, well, he was acting callously during these periods of time, and now his reaction is different, you can go ahead and make those reactions. But then you also have to put that in context with the fact that he's a 17-year-old kid who just went through the things that he did, who has
He's
now
18
faced
now.
possible prison time. Like, you have to be able to put all these things in context instead of just straight up saying like, oh,
He's
look how
18
funny
now,
he
he's-
was when he-
he's
yeah,
good
sure, he's
mates
18
with-
now, but he was
he's good mates
17
with
when it
white
happened, so it doesn't
supremacists.
matter. When it
Well, you
happened, he
beat
was
up a girl
17 years
before
old.
that. I don't think he's innocent
I mean,
as shit. Like,
I
he's,
was,
he's
I
a
was
violent
like,
person by
I don't
nature.
think. If
Why
he
does
was
it
like-
matter that he
was
beat up
like-
some girl before?
If he was like, if he
Demonstrates
was
he's got violent nature. I don't have
yeah.
any sympathy
No, it
for him or
doesn't.
empathy for him.
He fucking sucker punched her from behind as well. It was fucking.
Yeah.
Look,
garbage way to
I
do
watched the
things.
video. It looked like she deserved it. To be honest.
That has
Well,
absolutely
I don't
nothing
really-
to do
I don't
with what
really-
happened.
She initiated the first push on that video.
That also has absolutely
I
nothing to
don't
do
really
with.
give a shit.
That'd
Like,
be
if
considered
it was the
versus
if it was the
felony sometimes.
No, but
She
what I'm
was
saying is
fighting
that
his
has
sister.
absolutely
What are you
nothing to
talking
do with
about?
what
He
happened.
wasn't even
Can we-
involved
can
in
we
the
all-
interaction.
Vaush?
Can we all agree he was no angel?
I hate you.
Definitely no angel.
Okay.
I will
Here's
agree
the
with you on
thing.
that, Vaush.
Okay, look.
Here's the thing is, remember, go ahead, Vaush.
I just want to say, like, look, okay, Rittenhouse seems like a piece of shit. I don't give a fuck about him. I don't care about people making fun of him. The issue is, like, it's really about where you direct your political capital and the rhetoric that you use, you know? And you also have to recognize, like, wouldn't we make fun of him no matter what he did? Like, I'm pretty sure that if it was the other way around, that he was some BLM protester and he was up there on the stand defending himself against accusations of murder. Like, if he started crying and the right started making fun of him for crying, I'd be like, "What the fuck, you sociopaths?" He's like,
but the right and the left,
fun
the
of
right and the
gross
left are not
groups
morally
for-
equivalent. Taking the piss out of a BLM protester who's in exactly the
Wait,
same
wait, hold
fucking
on.
situation, they would have been justified in being out there fucking protesting in the first place.
I'm not
And frankly,
morally-
if they shot some fascist dude in the head, I wouldn't be crying over that.
I'm not
It's okay.
morally equivocating the organizations or ideologies or politics here. I'm only saying that it seems like the signs that I would look for to make fun of his behavior are totally arbitrary, because there's stuff that I would excuse if it came from my side and wouldn't if it came from theirs, and it seems like it's totally just up to like team sports for me. So like with the crying thing, like I don't know, it looked kind of fake to me. I don't know, but like I don't know. People can cry in a bunch of ways.
I guess
But wait. I just want to finish this. Okay, I just want to finish this. I don't think it's like some giant fucking moral sin to make fun of him or whatever, because like we're all horrible people. We all make fun of like people who are far less deserving of being made fun of than Kyle Rittenhouse. People make memes making fun of people who are totally fucking innocent of everything on the world stage. People make memes about that shit. That's
Sure, you guys make fun of me all the time.
So hardcore like moral posturing and pearl clutching over people making fun of Rittenhouse crying, I find pretty cringe. People like hardcore defending the idea that they've totally proven through body language analysis that Kyle Rittenhouse is lying with the fake tears, that's pretty cringe. The only thing that I think is giga cringe here was the fucking prison rape jokes. That shit on Twitter.
Yeah,
that shit
no,
was
that shit is unacceptable. Because
that was
Yeah, I agree. That's bullshit.
Yeah,
Like, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I don't care, like, whether they are guilty or not. If you go to jail and you go to prison, you're serving your time. That doesn't mean that you need extra shit on top of that. Like, being raped is not a fucking joke. I don't see why people laugh about that shit.
I guess I'm a little petty.
I disavow.
I'm a little petty over the fact that the same people that are clutching pearls over like any interpretation of Rittenhouse's demeanor on stand were the same ones that were either quiet or were mocking, for example, Trayvon Martin's girlfriend. If you guys recall, she had a very, I guess you would say, Ebonics accent in the way she spoke, and a lot of people were acting like she was, the stereotypes that surround a young lady that might speak.
They pretended they couldn't understand her. Do you remember that? They had like an interpreter or something. It was a long time ago, but yeah.
And they were saying how how that was bad for the prosecutors, et cetera, and I don't know if this is like an apple for apples sort of deal, but it just makes you call into question what the.
It's not an apple for apples thing. It's the same as like, what do you make jokes about people dying? I mean, you have to fucking look at like who they are and what they've done, right? Like Rush Limbaugh dying was fucking hilarious. Fuck that piece of shit.
Oh shit! Do you guys think it's okay for him? Well, actually, Vivian, I want to ask you. Okay, so some of the people that Rittenhouse killed, abducted and murdered, were like bad people. I think pretty objectively. Like, do you think it's okay to make fun of them? Because they're awful people, and maybe they died in a way that maybe you disagree with, but they were shit people generally.
I think outside of the context of like how, for example, Rosenbaum, right? Like outside of the context of how Rosenbaum died, if Rosenbaum had like, I don't know, fucking raped those kids, then walked outside and had an anvil fall on his fucking head, that'd be funny as shit, right? I think you have to be careful about the like cultural context of it, because there's a lot more connotations that come with sort of like mocking the death of Rosenbaum, for example.
I want to ask a question.
Kind of like an irony that he was chasing down another kid when he got.
I have a question for you though, Didi, because like you seem to be set on talking about the criminal history of the decedents. Would you also look at the criminal history of the decedents of 9/11 because of the terrorist attacks and say, oh, wait, well, what? There were these guys that did horrible things that died in 9/11. So, whatever, we can use that as some kind of rationale. Would you treat that the same way? Because that's basically what you're doing, is saying that just because like you happen to side with this person or agree with what Rittenhouse did, we're going to talk about the criminal histories of the people he killed. I think that's stupid.
Yeah,
I think that's totally frivolous.
You just said it's stupid.
Well,
It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
No, it's not the same
would you
thing.
do that? Would you do that? Would you do that with those people? Would you expect that?
People that were okay. I understand your point. So people that were killed in the Twin Towers, for example, right, were sitting in their fucking cubicles, going through a normal work day, right? The guy that Rittenhouse killed, well, all three of them, were in the process of chasing him, attacking him, some other shit. So they were doing some stupid thing that led to them dying.
After he'd been pointing his fucking rifle at people.
No, that's not true.
That is true. He testified.
It isn't
to it
true.
On the fucking stand.
No, he didn't.
No,
he did.
No, he didn't.
I watched him sit there. There was the fucking.
Wait, are you talking about the last guy he shot? Like he testified.
No, Rosenbaum. The prosecutor asked him straight up, "Do you think it could be reasonable that when you pointed your gun at Rosenbaum that he feared for his life?"
Oh, you mean
like,
so after he got chased? So like
chased,
after he was chased then?
Rather than speculate on this, Vivian, provide the timestamp and the clip.
I'm not going to fucking.
I know exactly what she's talking about. I know exactly what she's talking about.
Do you expect me while we're on this fucking panel right now to go through like fucking 10 hours of video and find a
bunch of nuance, and there's plenty of instances where Rosenbaum
there's not that much nuance.
Rittenhouse pointed their guns.
Wait, can I posit something and see if we all agree?
But I literally don't care. Like. This dude was clearly
That's
fucking.
how genuine you are. All right.
I don't know what your fucking issue
wait,
is with me.
If you
come on this
aggress
panel
upon me,
you have some kind of fucking hate boner on over
Wait,
me. Like,
can I posit something? I just want to know what everyone thinks. Okay. I don't give a fuck about people making fun of Rosenbaum or some that was the pedo, right? Who died?
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck about that. I do think it's weird though, because conservatives always bring it up as though that exonerates Rittenhouse. Because that's it's like a post hoc thing. Like that's like you fire into
used into the trial.
Yeah.
No. Wait, well, I'm not saying it was used in trial. I'm just saying like oftentimes when it's brought up, it's like, well, how could Rittenhouse have done something wrong? Look at what Rosenbaum was like. Imagine firing into a crowd and by sheer luck, like 9 bullets all hit the heads of like the 9 people who were secretly like rapists or something,
Well, it's the same. It's the same. He was no angel shit, isn't it? Really.
All I can say is that I hope if I'm ever forced into a self-defense situation, the people who I have to shoot are pedophiles.
He could have. He could have got very unlucky and ended up shooting a lifelong activist that never committed a crime in their life.
It could have been a lifeguard. Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. I don't think it. You can make fun of Rosenbaum. I just don't think it bears any relevance to like the facts of Rittenhouse.
And that's what I was saying about. That's what I was saying about the connotations of making those jokes about Rosenbaum, right? Like, I don't give a fuck that like a pedo got shot in the head.
But you can still make the jokes though.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, but you can think that. Hold on, but you can.
Well, then don't get mad about making the jokes about Rittenhouse. And
I think the argument that Rittenhouse was justified stands on whether or not this person was a pedophile or a lifeguard or like a fucking cancer doctor or something, right?
Well, it just doesn't.
Rittenhouse didn't have like the information necessary to tell whether or not these people were pedophiles or anything prior to shooting them. Yeah. But
what if
he can simultaneously say that and say that when Rittenhouse is on the stand and he is what seems to be having a panic attack, he's crying not because he's remorseful or because he thinks that he did something wrong. He's probably crying because in that moment he's hyperventilating.
You don't know that he's having.
There's probably going to be residual.
What the fuck is this
residual trauma for 17
I'm literally on the fucking bollocks to Rittenhouse. Fuck this stupid fucking kid who sided with white nationalists train, right? And I'm not. Wait. And I'm not sitting here. I'm not sitting here saying I know that those tears were fake. So you sitting there thinking you know the exact.
That's the narrative. Every single news article that I've seen, from CNN to MSNBC, Fox News, everybody.
Hold on, but a few people in this question
this person is engaged in crocodile tears, or this person is truly remorseful of their actions.
I think that's what maybe you said.
Both of those positions are just as stupid as your fucking position of I know he was having a panic attack because of blah blah blah. When none of us are fucking mind readers. None of us are.
Okay, so
wait, hold on. But he's not even quoting a news outlet.
It's not being a mind reader. It's not being a mind reader. Okay. If you look at this person, if you look at that video, and you Google panic attack. If you've had a panic attack yourself,
I know what a fucking panic attack is, dude.
They fucking hurt. The guy is hyperventilating on the stand. The judge gives him 10 minutes to calm down, and that was the right call for the judge. Had nothing to do with whether or not he was crying.
You don't know whether he's having a panic attack or not.
That's also a way to make yourself cry. They teach you that in acting. Just so you know.
I don't know.
Oh my god, dude!
They do. I'm not fucking lying about that.
This is what bothers me. Okay, this is what bothers me.
You don't think that you don't think attorneys have strategy for the stand? You don't think they teach them how to act? Have you ever been in a for 5 seconds? They teach you that shit. They teach their clients that shit. They teach them how to dress. Teach them how to pass drug tests. They teach them how to act on the stand.
For absolutely nonsensical reasons. Absolutely nonsensical reasons. Conservatives do this to people on the stand. And now, because this individual is somebody who, yes, he's problematic. Yes, I don't necessarily agree with his decisions that night. Yes, I can think all the things that you think about his like character and all this other stuff. But at the same time, say this is inappropriate. We shouldn't make jokes about this. This seems pretty fucked up.
I don't know whether his tears were genuine or not. You don't know whether or not he was having a panic attack. That was my only fucking point. Okay, now I think it's fine to analyze the tears and go, well, I think what is a much more interesting analysis, right, is the whole like white woman's tears fucking narrative, because then it doesn't matter whether the tears are fucking genuine or not. White women fucking cry genuine tears all the time because they're terrified of the black man across the street who's done fuck all to them, right? It's an analysis of power, and it's an analysis of fucking social situations like that mean that even if he is crying his fucking eyes out, that should have no fucking bearing on whether or not he's innocent. None at all.
Nobody's saying that it has a bearing on whether or not he's innocent.
Well, a lot of people seem to think that it shows that he's genuinely remorseful, right?
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with remorse.
And that there was and that obviously there was no malice in his actions that day. He's just a good boy, like Chris Hake said on last night. Right? So, he's just a good boy who wants to go out there and help people. Why does remorse have anything to do with it? Because remorse can imply to some people, right, that he wasn't out there to do violence, for example.
But remorse isn't needed for a self-defense claim.
Oh my god.
Well, I think so. I could be wrong on this. I'm not a legal expert, but as I understand it, remorse or contrition can be useful because part of the legitimacy of a self-defense claim hinges on the extent to which you felt your life was being threatened, and the likelihood that you killing a person was made for that reason because you felt your life was threatened is greater if there's no other possible motive, like say, for example, bloodlust or rage, a desire for revenge.
He was running away.
Well, no, I'm just saying that I'm just saying that I think it is relevant when it comes to...
He was running away when the two heroes fucking tried to disarm him, yeah.
And it goes into the entire...
So remorse plays very well with the jury, but it wouldn't necessarily influence whether or not he would be more or less legitimate in his self-defense claim, right?
It is optically
so if somebody says, oh, I shot these people, I had no alternative, do you regret it? Do you feel remorse? Absolutely not. That doesn't change like whether or not they engaged in self-defense. But if you are remorseful because of jury perception, because jury perception dictates your guilt or innocence at the end of the day, that might actually influence the self-defense claim.
Wait,
yeah.
Go ahead, Vaush.
Legal strategy.
Oh no. I'm just agreeing. Yeah, it's one of those things where I think it has more to do with how people can infer your thought process and sort of assess the legitimacy of your claims, and less so with like meeting the criteria for proving it. Again, I'm not a lawyer. That was just my impression.
But it also goes
either way. He is probably
criteria.
The self-defense is probably going to be accepted. At least as far as I can tell, it seems like most people with some legal knowledge are saying that at the very least for the the homicide charge, that's going to get axed off, which I think is what.
Well, there's multiple homicide charges.
I don't wish that.
I think
I don't want him to get off, but I think he's going to. I absolutely do. Oh
yeah, I mean, he's a white kid who was probably always going to get off it, but.
What?
But it's
so if he gets acquitted of these charges, you're still going to call him a murderer?
Yes.
Okay, so
because
you
were
actually then wrong.
No.
A court of law determined him not to be a murderer.
I'm sorry.
He's still a killer.
Is O.J. Simpson a murderer?
Yeah, there you go.
David, do you think they could have gotten him on a manslaughter charge?
Okay, well, I don't give a flying fuck what a court of law says when I'm judging what is and what isn't an unjustified killing. He is not legally a murderer, but as far as I'm concerned, morally, he is a murderer.
Not a murderer.
He's still a killer.
Wait, I'm sorry. Do you think murder is only applicable in a legal sense? Is that what you're telling me?
What is the definition of murder?
An unjustified killing.
That's not what the definition of murder is.
I mean, it is one of the definitions of murder, yeah?
Well, I think... Well, so wait. I think that colloquially, people do call people murderers without a legal...
premeditated killing of a human being by another.
Okay, look.
I don't know how that does not work, because there are people who kill in the heat of passion and they're still considered murderers, and that is not premeditation.
I genuinely don't care about this stupid fucking semantic debate. It is clear to anybody with half a fucking brain that people consistently use the term murderer to describe people who have faced no criminal charges for their actions whatsoever. For example, huge corporations whose policies have killed fucking shit tons of people, governments who have killed shit tons of people.
It just goes towards your mental status of you not being able to accept the outcome of this trial.
I mean,
I feel about Derek Chauvin.
Wait, hold on. Can I ask you? So a couple things.
Derek Chauvin was a fucking murderer, but if he was found,
not you, but you made a comment. You, Vivian. I'm asking Turk. I just want to
wait 1 second. Wait 1 second. So Vivian, you made this comment that he's a white kid, so he's probably always going to get off. But like, I don't understand why you'd make that comment as if his race has any bearing on the case. First off, and secondly, what I'm also curious about is his
race, his political persuasion, his age. There's a whole bunch of things that have a bearing on the case. I think it's
I don't think there's any evidence that his race has any bearing on the case, especially given that the people that he killed were other white people. Like, I don't know what you're getting at. White people that are killing white people.
I know what. That's why I added the political persuasion thing. It's perfectly reason. It's also the amount of fucking people who've been like, "Oh, Kyle can't be fucking white supremacist or whatever because all the people he killed were white." Like this, that's the dumbest fucking argument I've ever heard.
Nothing to do with whether or not he was.
I don't think anybody here was talking about white supremacy.
Oh, okay.
So we should always recognize when it comes to stuff like this that barring extraordinary circumstance, we're never going to have like direct evidence of racism. As far as I can tell here, there's none. Not with regards to like the proceeding or whatever result Rittenhouse is going to get. Of course, there is on average a statistical bias towards white people in the criminal justice system, especially with stuff like this, which is like really racialized. Like the context of the case here is clearly, I mean, it's in the context of BLM. So, for example,
you can look at the lawyers.
There's a bias towards class,
like the thin blue line lawyer and everything like that is seated with it kind of culturally, like so when something like this kind of rears its ugly head, it's gonna bear the face of its whole culture. So for him was simping cops.
There is a bias towards race, there's a bias towards class, there's a bias towards gender that actually works against men. There's a bias towards many different things, political persuasion as well. Conservatives tend to be let off more than left-wingers for the same kind of crimes.
Though, with respect to Vivian, I do worry about muddying the waters a little bit with like the invocation of perceived racial bias for cases like this, because while there's always going to be a statistical bias in favor of white people, unless there's any like specific evidence or like a reason to make its claim, I think it can blur the line between ubiquitous systemic racism and like provable instances.
Almost every official in that courtroom is fucking white as well, by the way. Like outside of the jury,
as were the people that were.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, and Kyle was hanging out with the Proud Boys and shit too. I mean, I don't know.
Isn't it important to at least like try to acknowledge whether or not you believe race in this case actually tips the scales? Because I think we can all agree that bias in the direction that helps a white person definitely exists in almost any courtroom.
No.
But I think you should analyze whether or not in this specific...
wait,
a white person is less likely to be convicted as guilty. That's what we're saying here.
So this is what
you need to analyze it on a case-by-case basis to say whether or not this actually tipped the scales and changed the outcome. And I don't think in this case it will.
Do you think, so the chappie just said it was white on white crime. Do you think white supremacy can be a factor in a white person murdering another white person?
Can I ask you something? Where was the crime committed, and what was happening?
Before that,
I think the answer is yes.
Just answer the fucking question, dude. It's really simple.
I don't know who you're.
9 out of Ben, I think. Was it 9 out of Ben who were talking?
No, it wasn't 9 out of Ben.
No,
it was
it
the guy.
wasn't.
It was the guy who just spoke and said he didn't know who he was talking to. You said, right? It was white on white crime. What does white supremacy have to do with it? If it was white on white crime, do you think a white person can kill another white person in the name of white supremacy?
It's entirely possible, yeah. But
do you think it happened in Mississippi? Do you think it happened in Charlottesville?
It happened in Mississippi. You ever seen the movie Mississippi Burning? Yeah,
it's not the current case we're talking about.
That is the current case that we're talking about.
White people have killed white people in the name of white supremacy.
He was out there alongside a white supremacist fucking militia, right?
That has absolutely nothing to do with.
Wait, hold on, that wasn't a white supremacist.
Wait, here's the issue. Here's the issue.
Yeah, the Kenosha Guard did have to
Here's the issue. So none of that matters whether or not he was defending himself. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if he was there illegally or anything like that. If I break a law, that doesn't mean that I can't defend myself.
No, you said, what does this have to do with white supremacy? It was white on white crime.
No, I didn't say that.
If you want to retreat from that, that's fine.
I never said that.
So is your position?
I'm just asking why everybody's bringing up things that have absolutely nothing to do with whether or not he defended himself or not.
Who deputized him to walk down those streets with that gun?
It doesn't matter.
1 second.
He has a Second Amendment right to.
He went in there to play Call of Duty LARPing, and everybody who was there was LARPing. He was crying about the fact that he got the smoke.
Everybody on both sides who was there was LARPing.
So I have a question about why nobody.
You need to make a actual difference between like Jason. I usually agree with you on a lot of stuff, but like here, you have to make a difference between like what is right and wrong and what somebody has the right to do. I have the right, a First Amendment right to lie to your face. Does that make it morally justified? No. But he was absolutely allowed to be on the street with a weapon.
No, he was not. Right. He was 17 and he didn't have a right to have that weapon. As a matter of fact, it was illegal. That's
actually arguable under Wisconsin state law when you look at the long rifle.
Yes,
statute,
the Wisconsin state
it doesn't matter. We don't even need to lean on that. He shouldn't have been out there with a gun.
Nobody should have been out there.
He was out there because he was out there in
Nobody should have been out there though, Viv.
Because he was out there in aid of a white supremacist cause.
Nobody should have been out there.
He was out there to hurt people that were BLM activists. That's what he was doing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be carrying a gun. He'd be carrying a bunch of fire extinguishers.
So you're going to infer that he was
carrying a bunch of fire extinguishers.
Well, he didn't need the gun.
He was actually carrying one when he started getting chased.
He had holler points too, and that's banned in Wisconsin. So what though? That's not the charges, and I understand. Like look. I could levy funny as fuck, non-problematic, non-prejudiced jokes about every member of that courtroom except the jury because I haven't seen them. Okay, but like I don't think that's gonna be problematic for the jury in deliberating their case. I don't think that's gonna fucking hurt race relations in any fucking country to the point where it's gonna be detrimental to some people to make some jokes about Rittenhouse crying the way he did, bro. Like, oh my god, like.
I mean, Rittenhouse is already
to pull it back. I don't give a fuck about him crying, and I actually have I have a picture up on my stream of him crying right now. I think it's fucking hilarious. Get mad at me about it. I don't give a fuck.
I wanted to add a hypothetical.
Okay, OnlyFacts and Doobie.
So it is. I'm gonna preface it that it is kind of silly, but a lot of people will tell you, well, it doesn't matter that he was there in the first place. That what's important that he was acting in self-defense, etc., and that his intent in going to there and defending property that's not even his, that he wasn't even being paid to defend. I mean, thinking somebody that's on the right wing like him, he would probably want to be paid for his services. I guess he's just donating his time, gas, bullets, and weapon. But let's say I wanted to go to Syria and I'm picked up by U.S. Special Forces with an AR-15, and I just want to defend property there from the Assad government. I know this is in the jurisdiction of another country, but I would be picked up and called a terrorist, and I would probably go to jail. I was actively putting myself in a situation where there could be violence, and there is violence to be had.
I don't know.
And I'm not saying.
You should. I mean, you should probably team up with local forces or whatever, and not really go out there and do it by yourself. But like the sentiment, like that's pretty base.
Yeah. So then it comes down to this: if you wanna sit there and say that like, oh, he shouldn't have been out there because he was breaking curfew, charge him with that. If you want to say that he shouldn't have had the rifle in the first place, go ahead, charge him with that.
He shouldn't have been out there.
What he was doing, but if you want to sit there and say that like him being out there because of curfew and like he shouldn't have had that rifle in the first place, therefore he doesn't have a right to defend himself when somebody's aggressing upon his person, then you're just straight up wrong for that.
How about he shouldn't have been a bitch ass white boy?
He was a white.
I would agree with that. He was a bitch ass fucking motherfucker, dude.
He was a white supremacist out there in opposition to fucking to a black civil rights protest. That's the moral fucking crime and the reason why you shouldn't have been out there with a fucking gun. Okay,
that doesn't mean that he can't defend himself though.
He can't defend himself because him simply
why did the bicep guy go out there with an unlicensed
firearm? Or he's not allowed to defend himself.
It just wasn't renewed.
He can't defend himself. Because
why did the guy that got blown up in the bicep go out there with an unlicensed firearm concealed?
Let Viv finish, please.
He can't defend himself because him being there in aid of a white supremacist cause is in fact an act of aggression.
Yes. So going out there.
So then what should have happened to him, Vivian?
What should have happened to him?
Yeah, when they jumped him, what should have happened to him?
POS warning.
Police should have picked him up long before that.
Instead
of giving him water bottles.
I want to hear this answer.
TOS warning.
We know the answer.
He's not morally permitted to defend himself.
Kyle Rittenhouse, every member of the Kenosha Guard, and the other fucking militia groups and random fucking white supremacist vigilantes who were out there should have been fucking run out of town by the protesters who were there, right? And I would even go so further as to say that like pretty much all those protesters should have been fucking armed, organized, and trained. I'm fucking so sick of seeing this shit happen. I'm so sick of seeing fucking people running over protesters with cars. I'm so sick of seeing fucking white supremacists barreling through crowds of peaceful student protesters.
One of the protesters was armed, unlicensed,
unlawfully
concealed.
Wait.
Rittenhouse.
I'm not making a legal argument here. I'm making a moral argument here.
Okay, so can I respond to that?
I don't give a fuck about the law. What I've just advocated for is illegal.
What does run out of town mean? What does that constitute?
Wait, no. Before we get to that, though, so are you saying that
they should have?
Hold on. Go ahead.
That means they should have used the minimum amount of force necessary to fucking get them out of the fucking area.
Doobie.
Okay. So, to be clear, you're saying that given that... So this was a community that the night before buildings were set on fire. Right? And some of the business owners in this community did ask for people to help them protect their stores. Right? And this is a community that he had worked in before, that he was very familiar with, that his father lived in. Right? So you're saying that if he's out there trying to defend his community from people that are burning down buildings, he's not stopping the protest. He's not counter-protesting. He's just trying to keep people from burning down buildings in this community. Do you think this aligns him with white supremacy? And that makes it reasonable for somebody to run him out of town?
He was demonstrably fucking there alongside white supremacist militias.
I mean, I think going out the drinks with
people.
Wait, that's not.
It's not that, Doobie. It's more specifically the fact that he has aligned himself in several photographs and images with like Proud Boys and stuff. Like,
he was fantasizing about shooting people before he went there. What are you guys talking about?
Wait, 1 second, Ben. That's dishonest, Ben, because that happened later, right? I'm talking about what happened that night. So that night, he and those other people were there to defend buildings because people had been setting shit on fire in the town. That
Dude, I have a question for you. Do you think that let's say, and it's okay to put your own opinion out there, speculate on this, all right? Do you think that these same group of people that he went out to drink with a few nights after it happened, do you reasonably believe, like I do, that he would have probably also shared a drink with them a few nights before? Or do you think his entire worldview changed in that time between the shooting and the time you went out the drinks with those guys? Do you really believe that his entire world?
I don't think that being invited to a bar and going out and having a drink with people that are supporting you after this very traumatic thing you went through automatically means that you support and endorse everything that those people.
I don't know. He has a lot of social media posts that say otherwise.
But I'd appreciate it if you just answer the question. So, are you saying that because this was a pro BLM potential riot, and that these people would have been burning these buildings down in support of BLM, anybody who would have kept them from burning down those buildings was in support of white supremacy and should be run out of town. Should have been run out of town.
Oh, am I saying that?
Yeah, that's what you said. That because he was there with these people to keep people from burning down those buildings, which is what they were doing. Right?
Do you really think he was there to stop burning buildings down?
That's exactly what he's doing. He's on video doing exactly that. He's not on video harassing people. He's not on video harassing people.
Give it a try.
I mean, he asked me the question.
Okay, hold on. First of all, like, let's not pretend, okay? Hanging out with Proud Boys is pretty fucking telling. Like, come on. No matter what situation you've been through, okay? If no matter what traumatic situation you go through, if afterwards you're hanging out with the Proud Boys, it's telling. Does it automatically indicate anything 100%? No, nothing can, but it's something. When we're talking about, like, going in to defend a community, the issue is that this is almost euphemistic for a lot of groups. Because defending the community has been a centuries-old rallying cry for white supremacy in America. You can go back as far as the Ku Klux Klan, but very often a desire to oppose civil rights, to oppose blacks' voting rights, or I mean, there's a ton of stuff. Usually, like, it's not always rallied behind with like, yeah, let's go fuck up black people or whatever. And I don't think Kyle Rittenhouse wanted to do that, by the way. But it usually gets heavily tied into the idea that people need to, usually white people, usually like pro-police white people, need to organize to defend communities, usually in a way that involves violence, threats, and intimidation, which open carrying near a protest unquestionably is. Now, does that mean it's wrong to open carry at a protest? Not inherently. I mean, I think the Black Panthers did it with a lot of rapport and discipline, which I think was respectable. I don't even necessarily have an issue with using violence to defend your property. I know there are a lot of dirty commies on here who will say like, oh no, a human life is a delicate flower which must never be infringed upon, no matter the... No, that's bullshit. Like, if people are... Yeah, so I'm not defending any of that shit. However, what Kyle Rittenhouse did is historically and contemporarily a terrible way of defending communities. It exacerbates tensions. It heightens like the likelihood of violence significantly. It's just not a good way of handling things. So let's back away from like the idea that whether or not Kyle Rittenhouse is a white supremacist hinges on the explicit intent of his actions, because I think that both parts of that equation are wrong. What we should ask ourselves is, was Kyle Rittenhouse being motivated to perform a useful, helpful civic function, and is what he did aligned historically with what white supremacy has often looked like in this country? And to me, the answers to those two questions are no and yes, respectively.
So
okay, but wait, can you charge someone with murder based on that? Because I agree with you entirely. No, okay, I understand.
When I say Kyle Rittenhouse is a fucking murderer, I'm not saying.
I understand.
I'm not saying legally.
Why are you asking a question then? If you understand?
I'm asking a question. Just let me get to it. I agree with like literally everything Vaush just said. What I'm asking here is, okay, if he's guilty of doing that action, which I agree with Vaush, what should be the legal punishment for it?
I don't think it influences the legal outcome.
Exactly. Well,
right?
My thing is, it's really difficult because I believe his intent was absolutely to go there to kill people. I believe his intent was absolutely bad. But I believe...
I think you're probably wrong there.
But I believe I believe his intent was to go LARP, and he fantasized about killing people, as we could see through the video before. There we go. I specified a little bit better. All right. Regardless of that, the exact situation of that exact killing, I think, is well and justified self-defense, even if he's bad enough of a human being to actually do it not in self-defense. The issue is bad people can do technically morally justified actions while remaining bad people. I think Kyle
Bad
Rittenhouse
people
is a
can
terrible human being.
bad people can do morally justified actions, right? But if the KKK marches through your fucking neighborhood, that is an act of aggression on their part. And if you go up and kick them in the fucking face, morally, not legally, right? You are entirely justified in doing so. And them fighting back is not fucking self-defense because they threw the first fucking.
Why is that an act of aggression?
Wait, hold on. But wait 1 second. Wait, hold on, Ben. 1 second.
How's that an act of aggression?
Ben, wait 1 second, Ben, please. So what if the KKK is in a neighborhood and then people go into that neighborhood and set shit on fire? Like, did the KKK not get to like defend themselves? Do they just need to stand there and take it? They don't get to defend themselves.
No, the KKK have no place in a civilized fucking society.
Okay,
should be run out of every fucking.
So these people.
But what about the
wait
people
1
who
second.
think
No,
the
wait 1
exact
second.
opposite of you?
So you think that because he's aligned himself with white supremacy, quote unquote, that he has no ability to defend his community or these businesses that they've been asked to defend or any of these things because they're on the wrong side of an issue.
It's not the wrong side of an issue. It's that they're going to adjudicate that action with a bias.
If he's taking action in support of that agenda, then no.
Wait, but the action he was taking was not allowing people to set fire to a building.
The
reason they were there the night is because the night before buildings were set on fire. That night, he and others in the group prevented other buildings from being set on fire. Right?
He went there with hypervigilance in mind, and he was going there to be hypervigilant towards a certain group of people.
Yeah, a certain group of people that were setting buildings on fire.
Wasn't there even days where he was just like scrubbing off graffiti off the walls, just trying to repair some of the damage and doing the cleanup afterwards? Like, wasn't that there?
Why do we even entertain this?
I love this rehab.
True, Viv. I'm sorry, but that is something that happened.
It's also true that he went out to the protesters and he
you
offered
don't like
them.
that fact,
Hold on,
Vivian.
he went
Keep
off.
simping for the clan.
He went off. Okay, shut up.
Hold
on. He went out to the protesters, right, and he offered them medical aid, right. The only medical attention that I saw him that we have video of him doing is to one of the protesters.
First aid kit. Right? That's not.
Wait, hold on. But he went out and he offered them help, and he bandaged up some of these protesters that you guys were saying that he was there to kill.
I am not saying that he was there to kill people. Okay, that was Ben, and
I
specifically.
No. I clarified.
And I specifically.
That he infantilized.
And I specifically objected to him when he said he went to kill, and he did then amend his statement.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I did not say he went there to kill. I said his presence there was in fact an act of aggression, being as he was allied with demonstrably white.
Yes, strangely enough, I know that there are a lot of people in this voice channel, Viv. When someone says something, it's not always directed at you. Okay, I know that.
Here's my problem is every time somebody mutters,
it's a lot of fucking bad faith.
Every time I hear a right winger mutter about defending property and property being burnt, a lot of this property being financed by big banks that are getting bailed out all the time, but that's a whole total different thing. It's funny that this same defense of property thing is never talked about when some stupid NHL team wins and burns half of a downtown, or when University of Kentucky wins in basketball, or et cetera, et cetera. I always see it when there is some sort of civil rights thing. Wait a second. Governor
tell me where the
Reagan
fucking
in
armed
1976
militias are.
does the Mulford Act because the Black Panthers are walking around with rifles, and all of a sudden, Republican Governor Reagan doesn't want the Second Amendment right to be practiced by American citizens. So it is about race. It will always be about race, and that's how it's always going to be. So to come here and whitewash it, literally and figuratively, washing the walls off or defending what? I mean, look at how Walmart is constructed.
Not Walmart. These were local businesses.
I think the problem is the local businesses, even the black local businesses.
I don't care.
Yeah, all those black local
businesses. These buildings are built in a way that really don't last more than 5 to 10, 15. I mean, we are assigning so much value to something that is of no value in this country.
Their entire lives can be destroyed, and there is value there. You take away a person's livelihood, and they're already struggling black people, and then you're taking away their livelihood. Maybe their family photos were in that. Maybe their family photos were in there, or there was sentimental things. These are destructive measures, and if you don't have the appropriate insurance for rioting, your family's
how many
destroyed.
fires you put out if you're shooting somebody?
Property destruction.
If we want to mitigate that damage, okay, here are some facts. Rioting is a natural component of the human condition. It has been practiced in every country on earth. It has been practiced in pre-modern society. It is a thing that happens. And the way we have to deal with it is with proper police responses. That is the way to mitigate damage done by protests and by rioting. You control where the protests are, you control where they go, you have strong police walls that don't instigate violence, but do prevent them from reaching certain residential areas.
But the police couldn't even fucking do that, because they were instigating violence all over the country.
Hold on, let me get to the punchline. There are preemptive measures that you can take. I know it sucks and that it's not fair. Boarding up your windows as a small business owner must be a terrifying and harrowing experience that I couldn't even imagine. The knowledge that you have so much money, your whole livelihood wrapped up in like one building, and you have to board it up because you know protests for something that you maybe even support are going to be rolling by soon. I know that can be really difficult, or at least I assume. I imagine it's difficult. But the solution to this is not encouraging vigilante militias to maraud your neighborhood with firearms. That's just not, it's just not a good, it's an ineffective way of handling it. The best way to do this is to expect more from your police. And police in America have historically done a pretty bad job at riot management. I know, for instance, in the LA riots after the Rodney King decision, the police were so legendarily not just incompetent, but malicious in how they directed crowds, that they amplified property damage and deaths far more than what we saw during BLM in LA. We need to expect more of them. That's the most that we can do with regard to damage mitigation.
Sure.
Because protests are going to happen, and we're not helping it by encouraging people to act as militia members and engage in behavior that, let's be real, might lead to more riots in the future.
Okay, but Vaush, if you're wait 1 second, but Vaush, if we're given that we're currently living in a state where the police aren't very reliable when it comes to managing riots, they aren't very good at keeping people from burning down buildings, from getting hurt. They might even push people. In fact, there's evidence that they were involved in starting some of these riots and breaking into buildings and shit to set some of this stuff off. So, given that this is a reality we live in, don't you think it's reasonable for people who don't trust that the police are going to do enough to protect their livelihood to want to stand out there with a gun with their friends and to keep people away from the building?
Yeah, yes, wait. Okay, so like I agree with you, Vaush,
property
that
owners assigned him the responsibility for that. Which one of these property owners assigned him the responsibility?
I just want to respond to that. Yeah, it's totally reasonable. Maybe not with Rittenhouse, because there were other circumstances, but if you're going out there and it's like your business or whatever, I think there's a natural human impulse to do stuff like that. However, unless you really know what you're doing and really have the community backing to protect your neighborhood, not just the one business, but it can't just be one person. That will not hold off a riot. You need a lot of people, and you need to indicate that rioters cannot come near your property. Unless you can manage that, it's just a really big gamble. I understand why people would want to do it, but it's just generally not.
Do you know who I would call in for that? It wouldn't be the fucking Kenosha Guard.
Hey, I have a question for Doobie then,
like
real quick.
I agree with what you're saying, Vaush, that like it shouldn't be like vigilante behavior should not be like encouraged in the United States. But yes, I agree with Doobie that like, you know, the climate right now and the distrust in the police, and they don't handle these situations very well. But also, I would like to add on this is that a lot of the time you hear this thing where well, this black kid in this neighborhood was bred and raised to commit these crimes and such. So I could see the same thing if these were his friends and the people, his coworkers and everyone around him, and he's an impressionable teenager. He may have been pushed into this idea that he needs to start being vigilante, just like his peers, just like the people he looks up to, just like his mentors. So you can understand why he wanted to be there, to be like the people that he respected.
This is such a dishonest fucking argument, because the idea that these people didn't trust the police when they're waving fucking Blue Lives Matter flags, when fucking Carl Rittenhouse was a fucking Blue Lives Matter kid, like the idea they don't trust the police to do this shit, like that's just so fucking stupid. Honestly,
on the next episode of Rehab a Killer.
Is it ethical to defend?
I just want to. That's my name. I just want to respond to that. I do understand why people would do that, but we still have to push against it, you know? Like, if you want to get all sociological about it, the reasons why people become neo-Nazis also totally make sense, right? If there are some descriptive things you believe about the world, like you're taught them, or like you go in a bad internet forum or whatever, it really doesn't take that many logical leaps to arrive at some of the worst political positions imaginable. But, like, once you understand that, understanding is the first step, and then, like, the second step is, like, how does my understanding help counter it, you know? So for people like Kyle Rittenhouse, like, this is a cop worshiping kid, probably like had a lot of fantasies growing up about how he could be like the Lone Star hero. I know I had those fantasies growing up.
A lot of teenagers, especially young boys, experience this feeling.
I don't think Rittenhouse is that different from a lot of people, you know? Maybe he's more politically right-wing than I am, but I understand how he's acting on a lot of community impulses that are sort of generally prominent. But we still have to push back against it in this, especially in this particular form, you know, because there's always more to it than just community defense, right? Like, we can look at Rittenhouse's politics. His politics don't begin and end at community defense. There's a lot wrapped up in there, and you have to think of ways like, how do we culturally discourage this? One of the ways you could do it is by not having any rioting, and, you know, go bet on that horse at the racetrack, I guess, if you're gonna wish on a star. But you can also encourage like better behavior from police, like reform that make them more trustworthy in situations like this, so that they respond to protests not by instigating violence or causing it, you know, property damage themselves, but rather by like effectively controlling and minimizing the damage, stuff like that. Or your cultural narratives about BLM. We know conservatives were exaggerating the damage done by BLM. They're literally burning cities, and we have the bill from all the damage BLM has done. And considering that it was the largest civil rights protest in our country's history, and it lasted months and months, and it was all over the country, not really that bad. Not to say there weren't
2 days of the war in Iraq.
Yeah, like in terms of like the money America throws around, but conservatives were talking like our country's infrastructure was literally like being
I think that's only because like it was
And there
so
was
noteworthy, and to say that we are in such strife that this is actually what happened. It is a noteworthy thing to talk about. That's why we're still talking about it today.
Everybody knows it's noteworthy. These contributions are pointless. The focus on the BLM protests said nothing about the fucking like over 100 vehicular attacks on protesters, etc. The narratives that we created around these riots and protests, right, was utterly fucking disgusting and hyperbolic, and was aimed to paint the BLM protesters in the worst possible fucking light.
And that does create like Rittenhouse type dealios, where people see all this and they get a really imbalanced perspective on what's going on, and they get like super doomer, like, because Rittenhouse probably thinking like, oh shit, America's under attack, you know? So he goes on out there, and you know what happens, and we have to reflect on whatever cultural trends brought us to that point. That's my only argument.
And he picked the wrong fucking community because of the information. But the problem is, right, you have two ways of attacking these things. You have to recognize the social things that are going on, right? What we were talking about, the media, what we were talking about, various narratives around the protests and so on, and you have to fight back against that. And that's how you stop more Rittenhouses being created. But once a Rittenhouse has been fucking created, then you need to deal with the individual. You have to defend against that shit.
Okay.
So
I Rittenhouse within.
I wanna hear from Turk. He hasn't said anything and Nine on the Ben.
So I've got a couple different things. So just to, Vaush, I know you love like theorizing stuff, right? So if Rittenhouse didn't have the AR-15, okay, and he just had his fire extinguisher in one hand, his med kit in one hand, but he had a pocket knife in his pocket, right? And he goes in and he's in the exact same situation with the first person that he killed, and he happened to kill the guy by, stabbing him in the throat. Would that be considered the same thing that he's going through now, because he's using a different tool to defend himself?
Well, morally, I think I would be more favorable, in large part because you can't, like, he wouldn't have been open carrying it, The big implied threat of bringing, like, an AR-15 to one of those protests is, like, walking around as a visible, like, yeah, I'm a militia member, yeah, I'm escalating violence through my presence, yeah, my presence around you could mean, like, death for any one of us at any time because I have a machine that can kill instantly. Stuff like that, like, that's what a gun is. Okay, but if you have a knife, the potential for violence is concealed.
But your concept of Rittenhouse being out there providing fire extinguishing services, or providing a bandage boo-boo kit to whoever asks for it, or saying, hey, you dislocated your shoulder, there's a hospital down the street, you're cool with Rittenhouse being out there doing what he was doing without an AR-15.
It's just the fact that he was brandishing a weapon.
Well,
it's not just the fact that he was brandishing a weapon.
I'm asking Vaush, Vivian, shush.
Oh, fuck you.
I'm sorry.
Jesus fucking Christ. It's just so obnoxious.
It's obnoxious because I'm asking someone else other than you.
Yeah, basically.
It exacerbates the issue massively, I think. My issue isn't going out when there's a protest, and my issue also isn't having the capacity to defend yourself if attacked. It's the combination of open carrying with being there as part of a militia, with being there as part of a broader cultural narrative against the aims of the movement that people were protesting in favor of. So if he came there as a medic, but still like a conservative, like anti-BLM type, but he wasn't open carrying and instead had a knife. I mean, I guess I wish he wasn't a conservative, but I wouldn't like look at him and go like, why did he bring that knife, you know?
So it sounds like the act he was doing was okay. The fact he had a firearm on him was the big boo-boo.
He just said it wasn't just the firearm. Holy shit. Like,
open carrying is the big act that exacerbates the potential for violence and escalates.
And that's why I asked for clarity, Vivian. Jesus, shut up.
Also him being there with the fucking militia members and so on.
Right. If he didn't have a gun, but they all had guns, then it would...
Yeah, but like you just conceded, you wouldn't be upset about that. You'd be like, whatever.
So even if none of them had guns, right, but they were still quite obviously there in opposition to the BLM protesters, that's still a fucking act of aggression. It's not quite to the same level of danger. Don't give me the fucking how.
For the record here, Vivian is going one step past what Vaush is saying, and saying that them just being there is an act of aggression, and they should be they shouldn't be able to defend themselves at all.
Because
I have no say. I have no say over whether or not they should be able to. The thing that I'm saying is that I don't believe that they can be defending themselves if they are the first ones to commit an act of aggression.
Okay. Oh, let's go.
But why are these rioters committing
being there is aggression?
Basic logic, dude. Sorry.
Defending property is an act of aggression, according to Vivian.
Okay.
Is that what I said? Did I say defending property? Did I say
was he asked to defend that property? Was he assigned to defend that property?
Bad faith can you
To
be?
answer Jason's question, was he asked to be there? Yes, it is.
How
on record
incredibly bad faith can you be?
Who was he contacted by?
He was contacted by. You can go and look at the court records. Someone from the car source asked them to be there to actually defend the property.
And was he by the car source when he shot those people?
He was running between like 2 and 3.
He was heading to another location where fires were being lit, and he was going to put out the fires.
So he wasn't at the place he was supposed to be guarding. Is that what you're saying?
No, he was running. There were 2 locations.
Yeah, there were 2 locations, and the other location was about to be set on fire or was getting set on fire, and he was actually radioed and asked, or no, on the cell phone asked to go to the location. So he was going where he should be. He was going as a body to actually put out the fire.
With an AR-15.
He left multiple times.
Wait, why does that matter? Not at a bank. Give it a try. You've been waiting.
All right, so real quick, I want to respond to this, and then I have a specific question for Vivian. All right, so one, if you actually look at the video, mainly the main video that they threw out or said that they couldn't zoom in on because it was like a drone, the car lot of which he was actually told to defend is to the left, and the fire he was called to go put out is like 1 block to the right. So I'm sorry on that one, Jason, you're kind of wrong. I
was asking the question because I didn't know. That's why I was asking.
Okay, you're good.
We provide clarity.
All right, cool. Anyways, I have a specific question for Viv. Happy? All right. Anyways, so if your take is that he had no right to be there, and that because he had no right to be there, now all of a sudden he has no right to defend himself, what exact change to the law? And if I misinterpret what you're saying or anything,
I'll tell you
please point it
afterwards.
out.
Just finish. Yeah.
Okay. What exact change would you make to the law to make Rittenhouse guilty instead of innocent? And how would that actually affect other people who might also be innocent in the same exact scenario at a BLM protest on the left?
This entire situation is a result of disorganized protest, in my opinion, right? I don't think there should necessarily be a change to the law. I think there should be many changes to the law, but I don't think there should be a change to the law.
You think Rittenhouse should be in
to
jail?
this.
Yes or no? Do you think
Correct.
Rittenhouse should be in jail? Yes or no? Okay.
No, I think he should be dead.
Okay, fine. Let's assume he doesn't die, just because there's no point in even venturing into this if he's dead.
No, there is a point in venturing into it, right? Because I don't have a prescription for a change in law. I don't think there should be a change in law according to this. I don't make.
Well, if laws codified morality, and you're saying morally Rittenhouse is wrong, but then you're saying there shouldn't be any change in the law.
Morally, a lot of things are wrong, but we don't fucking legislate against them. I would say cheating on your partner is fucking wrong, but I'm not going to put somebody in fucking jail for
lying
it, right?
because of First Amendment. And the reason, and what is the reason why though? The reason why is because anytime we crack down on those certain things, it leads to unintended consequences.
Right, so I'm not arguing for state action in this case, am I?
Okay.
So you're saying people should have run him out, and if they resist being run out, he should have been killed?
Yes.
Okay, but here's the issue. When you are allowing something like that to happen, then you inherently allow somebody to take it into their own power and be a vigilante. If you're saying no state action is allowed, but also Kyle Rittenhouse
state action is allowed. I don't have control over what the state do.
I'm saying as in your moral prescription is saying the state should not change its law. But now also you're saying Kyle Rittenhouse is not allowed to be a vigilante, but the left is? I'm sorry, you can't input that into a legal system and have it
I'm not saying, wait,
they're not talking about a legal system, and they're not even talking about running people out of town anymore. They just want to kill Kyle.
Basically what Vivian's saying is that
you just said you want him dead. You said he's dead.
Yeah, you said that if people show up to defend these buildings, you want them dead.
I'm saying
Viv is saying that some people are okay to be vigilantes, but other people aren't.
Well, that's basically what Viv is allowing.
Yeah, and if you're either counter protesting or protecting the building that her group might burn down, she thinks you should be killed.
Viv is saying.
I want to make a point.
What else is Viv saying?
Viv, what is your prescription?
Lots of dumb shit.
Viv, what is your prescription?
When I say you should be dead, what I'm saying is
the N-word from Viv.
What? No.
The N-word.
What was which particular N-word?
Which
N-word? Don't say it a third time.
Don't say it again.
I didn't say the N-word. No.
You're gonna summon Destiny.
Yes.
Answer Doobie's question, Vivian.
Yes.
What is your fucking order me around, you cunt?
It's not a legal prescription. It's a moral prescription.
You guys are really asking stupid questions, to be honest, of Vivian.
What is it? What is? Oh my fucking god!
What is? No, it is really stupid. Like, you guys are all circle jerking about these dumb hypotheticals that
I've been
really
gooning this entire time.
No, I've literally been saying that everything that you guys are talking about doesn't matter to whether or not he's did self-defense.
Ideally,
at the end of the day,
he was running away. Wrong to be there and do what he did. That's all I'm going to say.
At the end of the day, nothing before. At the end of the day, nothing before what he was doing when he ran away. Anything that you want to say he was doing before that, he was running away. So legally, and in this situation, anything that he did before is now null and void. None of that fucking matters because he was running away from the situation, and somebody continued to aggress upon him. At that time, he now has a right to defend himself.
According to the law, he could have been running down the street going N-word, 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 and no one's allowed to assault you for that. We can shame you and whatever. You can file a report.
Vivian is not making a legal argument, even as Vivian is making a moral argument.
Well, so I'm making a moral argument.
She's not going to make a legal prescription as to what we should change in the law. What is the moral prescription? What should have happened, Kyle?
What I started saying, right, is this entire situation is a result of disorganized protest. Fucking protesters should be organized. They should be fucking armed. And then it's very likely that Kyle wouldn't have fucking shot anybody anyway. Because when you come up against a large group of armed protesters, much less violence is likely to occur. We saw this with
mob mentality?
We saw this with It's amazing, isn't it? They want to tell me what I've said, but they don't want to actually listen to what I actually say. It's amazing.
So okay.
Wait, what are we? Sorry, really quickly. What are we currently discussing?
Well, I think we're discussing why I said that Carl Rittenhouse should be dead, right? I don't think he should be dead. Honestly, I think that the entire event could have been fucking avoided by having. I'm not fucking backtracking. I'll get to it, okay? Just keep your dick in your pants for 5 seconds instead of spaffing all over the place, you dweeb. Now, I think a properly organized protest, this wouldn't have fucking happened, basically, right? Because he would have been faced with a wall of armed protesters, and there would be no fucking way that you're going to open fire against a whole bunch of people like that, right? It would just be suicide. It would be really fucking stupid. We saw this happen with the Black Panthers when they marched on the courthouse. Now, after the protest, right, there was a lot of retribution from the police, and there were gunfights and so on, and certain members were assassinated and so on. But during the protest, entirely peaceful. We saw this at Charlottesville, where a group of armed fucking anarchists took control of the park, and that was like a fucking sea of peace in the middle of an absolute fucking hellscape of violence, right? Because none of these fashy fucks wanted to charge in against a group of organized armed protesters. So that shouldn't have fucking happened. Now, if you don't have that, right? If you have somebody who's just fucking shot somebody who is at your protest and you have a gun, you should have fucking shot him. The dude who had the fucking pistol should have fucking domed that kid.
There we go.
The two people who fucking rushed him in the street were fucking heroes because they had a fucking. There was an armed.
Rittenhouse did self-defense.
As far as they were aware,
They died as martyrs.
As far as they were aware, there was an active shooter on scene who had already fucking killed somebody, and they attempted to disarm him. Now you can say that was stupid, right? But when people try and do this in other situations, like, we still recognize the certain degree of bravery and heroism on putting their life on the line to protect the other people around them.
Vivian,
okay?
So hold on, stop. Hold on.
Can I interject?
Hold on.
Seriously.
Hold on, shut up. Doobie, only facts, and then Turk, okay?
So yeah, actually, I just want to clarify what you said, Vivian, because what I heard was kind of batshit crazy. So I want to make sure that you weren't saying that thing. Right. So my understanding is that you said that people who are there to protect property, quote unquote, were there on the side of white supremacy, and because they were there on the side of white supremacy, they have no right to defend themselves, and the protesters should have run them out of town when they got there, and that if they resisted being run out of town by these protesters, they should have been killed. That's what I heard you say.
Depends on the resistance. I said that you should use the minimum amount of force necessary to run them out of town. If they turn guns on you, then yeah, you should fucking shoot them.
Okay, so if they're just if they go there to wait one second. So if they go there, if this let's say that they're the actual owners of this car stores thing, whatever the fuck it's called, right? And he's there with his family or his friends to defend his business from these protesters who the night before were setting things on fire. Do you think that those people should also be beaten and run out of town? Because them being there to defend this property puts them on the side of white supremacy?
It's not what I said. When I said
I didn't say asking a separate question.
That's the frustrating thing about this, right? Is that like I forget who it was now, said that they should be run out of town because they were there to defend property. It's not what I said at all, right? Like, we can recognize the broader context of the militia presence in that town in opposition to the Black Lives Matter protests, and we can recognize that, like, certain business owners might want to protect their property. Now, if they call on fucking groups like the Kenosha Guard to do that, they're allying themselves with fucking white supremacists, and that fucking sucks. That's a really bad fucking choice that you just made, all right?
Okay.
But if I was worrying about, like, my business, my house being fucking messed up by rioters, right? I would try and reach out to any organizations that were involved in the protest first, right? But if that was fucking unsuccessful, then I would reach out to other community groups to help me defend my property if I needed to. I would not reach out to like known white supremacist fucking militias to do it. Right? It's exactly the same thing as... What if you didn't know
they were white supremacists?
Okay, the owners of Car Source did not ask Kyle Rittenhouse, according to an article from The Insider, to actually be there and do that. No?
No, they asked a group of people of which Kyle was a part of.
In order.
Yeah, okay. They asked a group of people that Kyle was a part of.
We're working off a lot of hypotheticals here, but...
These aren't really... what I'm just kind of like boiled down on is if are you saying then that if you know,
I'm saying,
let's say this business owner
is an act of aggression. That's why.
Let's say this business owner does reach out to the Kenosha Guard, and there's an indication that they might be like a racist white supremacist group. But all they're doing there is standing in front of this business and keeping people, primarily white people, from burning that business down. Right? Do you think that they still should be run out of town? And if they resist being run out of town, they should be attacked and beaten and even killed if they resist?
Depending on the level of their resistance, obviously. You
okay,
shouldn't
the answer is yes.
Kill somebody unless it's
so. Yeah, your answer is yes.
So let's go to the next person.
But my answer is yes, because even if you're going to fucking give out lollipops to children with fucking Nazis, you've allied themselves with yourself with their cause, and allowing them to be quote unquote the defenders of the community, right, helps to raise their profile and advance their cause. That's not something that you gift to those fuckers.
I propose something.
Hey, let me.
Only facts. Turek, Vaush, jump in whenever. But okay,
I'll make it really quick. I'm tired of this being an interrogation of Vivian. Second of all, I'm really tired that we're not asking the right questions, such as the failure of the police. All the people here and in this country that want to talk about the thin blue line, and they're defending this and that and our safety. With all the goddamn MRAPs and vehicles and all the militarization of the police, why the hell can they not secure a goddamn gas station or a car dealership? Why are they kettling protesters on bridges? Why in the '92 riots did they push people towards Koreatown? Blacks.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to find anybody disagreeing that the police fucked up and that they
Doobie, stop, Doobie. I'm not being under interrogation at the moment.
Yeah, but you're just saying things that everybody's agreeing with. That's why we're not talking about.
Third of all, don't make me go fanatic on you guys. Third of
all,
do
it, bitch. I love you. I'm sorry.
I like him too. Third of all, I live in Oklahoma, where it is no permit concealed carry and no permit open carry. So anybody walk around with whatever they want, concealed or not concealed, without a permit. I went to many a BLM protest. I went to when Trump visited, when Biden visited. There were times where property was damaged, and not at one time was there a LARPer out there with their legal weapon to I don't know, mete out justice or defend property. Because like you guys like to say, guns don't hurt people, bad people hurt people, and Kyle Rittenhouse is a bad person. Second of all, we talk so much about property. We act like it's some holy enshrined thing. But when Tulsa Black Wall Street burnt down, to this day, 100 years later, people still deny it even happened. Lots of other black property was burnt across this country. We don't talk about defense of other historical injustice. Only now, when it's a Starbucks.
Yeah, why is any of this relevant to whether or not it was okay for them to defend a business in this community?
Well, that's not even the question. The question
they didn't hire Rittenhouse, though.
No, but none of that's the question. The question is whether or not Rittenhouse had a right to defend himself or not. Is he guilty or not? That's the question.
That's not the question.
I don't care about him being guilty or not. We have a fucked up justice system as it is. So he is guilty, he is not, is immaterial. We're coming at it from a systemic and a cultural sense, or at least that's where I'm coming at it. Culturally, we have a really fucked up social culture in this country. That's all. We can talk about the law. We can talk about definitions and pedantics. But that's how.
Well, Vaush, the Turk. Also, we are at level 1 hype train. You guys want to help out the channel, enjoying the content? Help us out. Sub to the channel, gift bits or gift subs. All that does help the channel. Allows us to keep doing this. We're at level 1 hype train. 70% left. Can we get to level 2 hype train? Thank you for those who've been helping out so far. Vaush, Turk.
Okay. 3 things.
Let me go, Vaush. Come on.
Control your impulses, please.
Can I go real quick? I'll be quick. Thank you. I appreciate it. So anyway, 3 things that I've had built up, okay? First of all, only facts. You got to DM me what your camera is, okay? Because that field of view looks sick. Second of all,
it is nice.
It is nice. Second of all, I have to go. It's almost 11. But third of all, and this is the good bit, I think another thing that we can focus on here is responsibly teaching people how to respond to protests and riots, whether they're on the left or the right, whether they're for or against the content of the protests, okay? One of the things that I really enjoyed about 2020 was that during the Hong Kong protests, there was a lot of media circulating in the West. This sort of came from them about responsible protesting tactics, you know, whether you're facing police violence or not, like, hey, we need people here who are medics, we need people here dealing with tear gas, bring extra t-shirts, bring this, bring that, bring milk, I don't know, have fun. There's like a lot of like really interesting technical stuff. I mean, there's no room for it like employment-wise, but it could be like a job, you know, like responding to protests, whether you're there for or against it. So if we want to get anything positive out of this, whether you're on the left or the right, we should spread responsible messaging. What should you do if you think there's going to be a riot in your community? How do you help your community? How do you avoid violence, mitigate property damage? And there's a ton of resource out there for that online, very worth looking into, but we should pay attention to it, because if we all followed those guidelines, we would have a hell of a lot less property damage and a hell of a lot fewer deaths than if we all wanted to do our own John Wick, Rambo, vigilante, neighborhood protection squad shit, you know?
Thing is, like, the exact thing that everybody's like, oh, Carl Rittenhouse totally has a fucking right to do, etc. The exact same thing that people were advocating for landed a fucking anarchist recently in prison for like fucking 2 years for saying that they should have that similar response to the Capitol riot, right? Like,
anarchist friends, who cares?
So if you're asking for consistency, do you want them both to be free, or do you want them both to be arrested? If you're asking for consistency, which way?
All I'm saying.
No. I agree with you, consistency, but which way? Do you want them both incarcerated or both free? Pick one.
What, me?
Yes.
That's you.
I already said I don't give a fuck about the fucking legal position here. I think the law is like fucked in so many ways. What? Okay. Kyle?
Well, she thinks one should be killed and the other shouldn't be killed.
Yeah, she thinks one should be incarcerated due to their
ideology. That's what I'm pointing out. Yeah.
Look, all I'm saying is that if the next big fucking civil rights protest comes about and I go on 4chan to see what fucking counter ops they're planning, and I see people sharing like, okay guys, bring wet towels so that you can like help people who have like fever or like anyone who's injured, okay, bring this, you know, bring tourniquets and make sure to bring that, like that would make me a lot happier than people posting pictures of guns laid out in their bed. That's all I'm saying, okay? I love you all very much. Legit a good convo. Good luck, Vivian. You got a lot. You're all right. Y'all take care.
Have a good one.
See you later. Take it easy.
Thank you so much, Vaush.